We usually think storytelling is for, like, novelists or screenwriters, right? Not for us. But what if I told you it's actually one of the most powerful tools you have in your everyday life? Well, in this explainer, we're going to break down exactly how to craft an amazing story in just about 2 minutes.
Okay, let me ask you something. Think about the last time you had to tell a story, maybe in a job interview, a big meeting, or even just to a friend. Did it land? Did people get it? Or did it just kind of fall flat? That's the exact problem we're going to solve right now. So here's what we've got lined up. First, we'll talk about your storytelling superpower. Then we'll get into the simple 3-act framework. I'll break down each act, the hook, the build, and the payoff using a real example. And then it's your turn to tell. All right, let's dive in. First up, let's talk about why this is such a critical skill to have. Because think about it. In those really high-stakes moments, a huge job interview, that big presentation, or even a difficult conversation, a good story can change everything. It's what connects you to people, what persuades them. It makes you memorable. Seriously, it's a superpower. So, okay, how do we actually build this superpower? Well, the great news is you don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's a timeless, super simple structure that literally anyone can master. It really just comes down to 3 acts. You've got the hook, which is your setup, then the build, where things get interesting, and finally, the payoff, where you bring it all home. Let's walk through each one piece by piece, using one simple story. All right, Act 1, the hook. And listen, this might be the most important part of your entire story. Because if you don't grab your audience's attention right at the start, you lost them. It's that simple. So, the hook has a very specific job to do. First, you establish a character and a setting that people can relate to. And then, bam, you hit them with a disruption. Something unexpected happens. Something goes wrong. This immediately creates a question in their mind. Okay, what happens next? Okay, so let's start building our story. Imagine I'm sitting in that interview, and this is how I begin. I say, the big interview was scheduled for 9 a.m. I was ready. Pretty simple, right? We've got our character, me, and the setting. But then, here comes the disruption. Then, on the highway, I get a flat tire. See how the tone just shifted? All of a sudden, there's a problem. So, let's just quickly break that down. The character? Anxious me. The setting? The morning of a huge interview. And the disruption? That totally unexpected flat tire. And just like that, you're asking the question, so what happens next? The hook is set, we got him. Okay, on to Act 2, the build. This is the middle of your story. It's where the journey really gets going and the conflict starts to heat up. The whole point of the build is to, build the tension. Your character has to face some kind of obstacle. They need to struggle. And crucially, the stakes have to get higher. Things need to go from bad to worse. So, back to our story. I'd say I had to change the tire myself, right there on the highway, in my best suit. And of course, I got grease everywhere. The obstacle's pretty clear, right? So I finally run into the building, a full 20 minutes late, and I'm a complete mess. This right here, this is the low point. The stakes are as high as they can get. You see how that works? The obstacle was changing that tire all by myself. The struggle was getting totally filthy and ruining the suit. And the rising stakes? Being super late from maybe the most important interview of my life. And that brings us to the grand finale. Act 3, the payoff. This is where it all comes together. This is the part that gives your story its meaning and makes it stick in people's minds. See, the payoff isn't just about how the story ends. It's about resolving that conflict and, most importantly, revealing the why. What was the whole point of that struggle? This is your moral, the lesson learned. It's the big takeaway you want to leave with your audience. So, here's the climax. I continue the story. Instead of making up some excuse, I just started with, you are not going to believe the morning I've had. See? That's a pivotal choice right there. And then, the resolution. They saw my resilience, not my messy suit. And I got the job. So let's analyze that payoff one last time. The climax, telling the story honestly. The resolution, getting the job. But the real why, the whole point of the story is this. Sometimes your biggest disaster can actually become your greatest asset. That's the message. That's what has impact. Okay, so you've seen how the framework works from start to finish. Now, it's your turn. Just remember these 3 simple steps. 1, the hook, grab their attention. 2, the build, raise the stakes. And 3, the payoff, deliver your message. Hook, build, payoff. That's it.
So I want you to think about it. An obstacle you've overcome, a lesson you learned. How can you shape that experience into this simple structure? What's your 2-minute story?